Seems fair to me. Fair decision.
Yes, it did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Lots to talk about on this particular evening or morning, whenever you watch it. So first, let's meet the panel, and then we'll get into it. She is the news director for the Big 550 KTRS, the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. He's the columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Mr. Joe Holleman, sitting in for the vacationing Bill McClellan. Ray Hartmann from the Riverfront Times and the Big 550 KTRS, and the king of all media from 590 AM, 97.1 FM News Talk, along with the St. Louis American and STLMag.com, Alvin Reid. But we're going to start with you, Ray Hartmann, about Steve Ellman, the St. Louis County executive. Had an opinion piece in the Post-Dispatch this week saying that St. Charles County should have some sort of input and say at the table when it comes to the possible privatization. He's the St. Charles County executive. Should he have any say in the St. Louis City-owned Lambert International Airport?
Well, first of all, anything that slows down the runaway airplane, like if you saw in the movie Airplane at the end of the plane that they kept changing the arrival gates, that's airport privatization. So anything that slows that down is fine with me. So fine for him and Sam Page and Denny Coleman, anybody that wants to slow it down. I thought it's interesting that St. Charles County, when somebody says, hey, it's $1 billion asset, all of a sudden it's ours. It's that we're all one big family. It's like when the Blues win the Stanley Cup, we're all one big family, or the Cardinals. Everything's together. If you mention Metrolink or crime, it's like St. Louis is like a third world country, you know, some from distant continent. So I think that's a little rich. And then the other thing I thought was tacky was the fact that the mayor of St. Louis, whatever you think about it, should not be reading about this in the newspaper. The fact that as a courtesy, apparently, because she indicated as much, and I checked it with her spokesperson, that the county executives of St. Louis County and St. Charles County wouldn't even give her a heads up that they wanted to do this, I think was not right.
But Ray, this is the same mayor that was going to private citizens asking about county police officers and helping out, and then forgetting that, oh, did I say that? I can't remember.
Or email.
Well, you know, turnabout is fair play, and also, look, you're right, and this is really why I don't care that they told her. Whatever Lyda Crewson wants the airport to be privatized, whether that's her actual feeling or that's the feeling of the powers that be that surround her. But the fact is, leave her out the loop, because all she's going to do is say, like, no. And I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Well, you know, also, I will say, Steve Ellman, when he was a legislator in the 1990s, was filing bills regarding Lambert Field. And more recently, as a St. Charles County executive, he's the guy who's been saying the state police should be patrolling the city on Highway 64, 40, 55, and 70 to relieve the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department of its law enforcement burdens. So I think he's been involved. He points out in his column that if you're in St. Charles, you're helping fund the development in downtown St. Louis, because those state tax credits that are used in all those historically preserved buildings in downtown St. Louis come out of state coffers. So it's at least an indirect subsidy of development in downtown St. Louis.
Very indirect.
Very indirect.
What are you talking about? That's money we can't spend.
People in Joplin are helping us too.
They are.
No, we're helping people in
and we don't do anything for the rest of the state.
Well, what does St. Louis City do for St. Charles? Remind me.
Well, there's a symphony, there's a baseball team, there's a hockey team,
arch.
There's a zoo, there's an arch, and I'm going to yet again agree with Ray when say St. Charles always seems to want to be part of the big region when it's not costing them anything. If they think there's money in it, but when somebody says, how about ponying this up, then it's a whole different story. So they're more than happy to come and use our streets, our roads, our facilities to come to all of these attractions in the city. And then they want to go back to St. Charles, and for God's sakes, please don't follow us out there on your Metrolink train.
Joe, you're acting as if the St. Charles residents are treated like free guests at these events. They pay for whatever they get at the Cardinals. Well, if they park, they do. If they buy things there, if they go on the zoo train or the children's zoo, they pay for that.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys.
I believe he has a point in that
And
this airport needs to be looked at. But the idea that St. Charles pokes its head up and wants to be part of something when it helps St. Charles.
He didn't
That's
say
not a regional approach.
Well, you have St. Charles residents using the airport. Is it that crazy that they wouldn't have a say in it?
Well, I think
Hey,
this
you
is
know
more
what?
of a...
Wendy ought to have a say in it.
I'm
She's
just
sitting there.
not sure
What do
that
you
there
think?
is that he represents that these positions of his represent the will of the people of St. Charles County so much as they do of a political leader who wants to be thought of as a regional political leader.
I agree with you, but the airport and this whole cockamamie idea that they got about, privatizing it, if I couldn't stand St. Louis and St. Louis County, I would have to, like you said, pop my head up and say, like, I do have a problem with this, and I can't hold that against him. I agree with everything you're saying, but I'm just saying on this subject, as far as the airport is concerned, I would have to.
Look,
Okay. Let's move on because time is limited.
Charlie, can I say one thing?
Let's move on,
East-West
guys.
Gateway
Let's move
should be
on.
studying this, not some group. It should be East-West Gateway that's doing a study.
All right.
Not a
Joe
ad hoc group.
Holleman, another topic, this time out of Washington, D.C., where the junior senator out of Missouri, Josh Hawley. You know you're the junior senator when your first name is Josh. There's no senior senator's name is Josh. All right. So he would like to move federal agencies out of the cocoon of the nation's capital and into places where people live, like South Carolina and Indiana and Ohio and Missouri. In fact, he'd like to move the Department of Agriculture to Missouri, Kansas City, for example, to distressed parts of the country that could use some of those jobs. And he's gotten into kind of a back and forth with a columnist, Greg Sargent, for the Washington Post on this and other issues. What do you think? Should some of that federal bureaucracy be moved out to places where people live, like the CDC is in Atlanta?
Short answer, yes. And long answer, I would hope that all of our senators and congressmen and congresswomen are trying to get jobs for Missouri. So I would trying to wonder why anyone in Missouri would be opposed to have the headquarters of the Department of Agriculture moved into the state of Missouri, or the people in Tennessee being opposed to the Department of Education being moved to Tennessee. What is happening and where that whole debate came about, which of course Jake Tapper weighed in on, was that Josh Hawley was saying it's elitist Washington and they don't want to live in the Midwest. And that was actually the original complaint was, well, then I have to move. As if there's not millions of other people who, when factories shut down, have to relocate. Why not move something out of the Beltway and put it out in the country where, like casinos going into depressed sections, immediately give an infusion of money? And the part of the problem is, I think that Josh Hawley touched on, and no one wants to say it exactly, is, but we love living in the Beltway on the East Coast, and we're so close to New York, and we don't want to move out to Cowtown. That's what they're not saying, but that's where the resistance is coming from.
Wasn't it implied in the National Review story that it was retributive in some way, that that because of the Trump policy that they were being punished? I think it's a great idea. I think it doesn't have a snowball's chance in a microwave oven.
It's happening. It's happening. The Agriculture Department is moving to Kansas City.
No, I know that. But I mean in terms of the department, not the Department of Education being relocated to Tennessee. I don't know how extensive we're going to get.
I think this is one of the most misunderstood things about the country is 5 out of 6 Washington bureaucrats are outside of Washington. 5 out of 6 federal employees live outside and work outside the Beltway. St. Louis has about 15. There's a list actually in the Washington Post that St. Louis and Kansas City actually do well. There's like 18,000 now in Kansas City, 15,000 federal workers in places like the Eagleton Courthouse. So the point is, we get them. Am I opposed to the idea of Missouri getting another?
You have to have a courthouse in the area.
But the point is, I think that once you open up to start saying, like, for example, Department of Agriculture, all the agriculture states, I guess, are going to start fighting over it, and I don't really know that it matters where their headquarters is located.
Then let's
it's
move.
cheaper.
Then let's move.
It is cheaper though, Ray. And in fact,
it's just
then
noise.
let's move. As you know, it's
just
the
noise.
example that Panera has, where a lot of their chief executives, because Ron Shake, the former chairman, liked living in Brookline, are in need of mass. But the worker bees and the corporate headquarters are technically in Sunset Hills. Why? And I asked a representative of Panera, why is that? And this person in Needham says it's cheaper to run the business out of Sunset Hills.
Well, that's why businesses incorporate in Delaware, because you don't have to pay taxes. This thing, first of all, having lived on the East Coast, if somebody said, like, I'm not moving to Tennessee or Kentucky or Missouri, I cannot hold that against them, okay? And if you want maybe the best and the brightest, like you're saying, and it came to the conclusion that, we're going to lose some people that we don't want to lose by moving this office, that's something to be considered. And I'll also throw this out. The previous president made a point of saying, like, we should keep NGA, like in St. Louis, and some other facilities in distressed areas, and that was not met with all this enthusiasm by the Republican Party. So this is an administration thing. It's a good idea now. 4 years from now, 8 years from now.
I think Roy Blunt was in favor of keeping it in St. Louis.
He was, but I'm just saying this whole policy of which, President Obama set the course on was met with resistance. And maybe 4 years, 8 years from now, let's say there's another president say, like, hey, I want to move some of these offices out of Washington, D.C., it would not be acceptable.
The only resistance was in Illinois. I mean, everybody else wanted NGA in St. Louis.
I'm not talking about NGA. I'm just using that as an example. I'm saying, like, moving all, like, these major, like, we're going to move the Department of Energy to Minnesota.
Actually, this idea by Hawley was actually first broached by a paper called Vox, which is left of center.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's a big. The main thing about it is it's not. As Wendy said, it's not going to happen. I mean, so
it's happening.
But Charlie, you're talking about the Department of Agriculture.
And I wouldn't. Doesn't matter to me if the Department of Agriculture was in Missouri or Kansas, wherever it's going to be. Who cares?
No, but I think it does matter to me. It'll help our state. It'll help the state I live in.
Sure.
So yes, it does matter to me. Not that I'm like waiting up all night for it to happen, but to say, and it's also like I was saying.
And I
don't
believe that the best and the brightest are on the East Coast.
I would think we got the best and the brightest here.
I agree.
No, I'm just saying they would move there. They want to live there. I'm not saying that everybody's from the East Coast.
Oh, I thought you were saying they don't want to move here.
Alvin, let me ask you about Tim Fitch, who, of course, is a member of the St. Louis County Council, former police chief for the county, and he is opposed to 18 St. Louis County police officers patrolling Metrolink in the city. Among other things, he thinks that the county should be reimbursed by the city. That's not the plan. Also, he doesn't want those officers working in the jurisdiction of Kim Gardner. He sees her as anti-police, and if there's a legal incident, he doesn't want them to be prosecuted by her. What do you think?
Well, I was one of the first people to champion that thought of him actually running for office at some time when he stepped away from being the police chief. And I'm really not all that thrilled with the 18 officers, patrolling within the city. But with that being said, just announce that you're going to run for county executive and be done with it. This is political, especially throwing Kim Gardner in it. That's such a huge leap. Where you're saying, like, if there's an incident, well, they don't want to be under the jurisdiction of Kim Gardner. So basically you're saying there's going to be an incident. Just chill a little bit on that. Now the reimbursement, yes, there should be some way that if the county is involved in patrolling Metro throughout the city, then yes, there should be some reimbursement, because basically county taxpayers are being asked to help the city with their tax dollars. And I'm not necessarily for that.
Well, and I feel a little silly taking a stand on anything that has to do with Metrolink when Metrolink decides that they're never going to charge anybody a fare and that they're not going to prosecute people for violating that fare. It's like you're going to have problems that are never going to be solved. But I think what happened in this case was that both Tim Fitch, I thought he had several good arguments. I thought the city's response that I believe Alderwoman Sharon Tyus gave also had good points. It's once again, like the airport, a problem that every time that city-county split has, every once in a while, touches on a real problem. And there is no way to work this out. If I'm a county resident, I don't want to put my money up front on the hopes that the city of St. Louis is going to pay me back.
Promissory note.
And yeah, here, we'll owe you the $1.8 million. Doesn't seem like a good investment. And if you have police officers saying, I don't want to be working to where Kim Gardner is handling the case, if that's what they're saying, that's what it is. And whether or not that's a reality, it doesn't matter if that's what they believe. Sharon Tyus says, well, wait a minute, people ride between city and county, so we should have both on there. Also a good point. And Kim Gardner can't relinquish, and I don't think she legally could, relinquish jurisdiction over crimes happening in the city. So I think it's one of these problems that there's really no solution to unless you look at Metrolink as one entire entity and forget city, county, come up with a transit police or something that would cut through all of these old wounds or old scars and get down to the point.
Metro did a serious security study with real national experts. They do this all over the world. I know I got ridiculed saying it, but it's real. The person doing it's done this in 50 markets, and it's not just a matter of common sense. And they're trying. Your point is right that we ought to. In what they're trying, Talby Roach, who I think is trying to change things at Bi-State, it's not fair to say that they don't collect fares or anything. They're trying to improve and follow the security the recommendations. They're in the process of implementing them. But my point is this: I agree with Alvin on a couple points. One, I don't see the logic just of the county just funding city folks, and I also don't see any reason for this gratuitous cheap shot at Kim Gardner.
Well, because she has a completely antagonistic relationship with the police, and I don't think.
And was it not the prosecutors who said that they? So you said they want to charge fares, but recently our paper had a story that said we won't prosecute anybody for not paying a fare.
Who said it?
The prosecutors.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if Metrolink says you have to pay a fare and you get written a ticket for not paying the fare, and then it's not enforced. It doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
Start at square one.
Don't forget, she tore up 5,000 tickets that the state police wrote on the highways a couple years ago, and she's got this exclusionary list of 32 officers, and they're unnamed. She doesn't say why they're on the list.
That's not politics. That's reality.
She hires Ron Johnson, the rank and file didn't like in Ferguson.
So, in other words, depending on who the prosecutor is, should be a let's say I want to be a police officer. If I have to be a police officer in the city of St. Louis, I don't want to be a police officer. I mean,
no one does. They can't get enough of
But if
them.
you want to defend Steve Ellman for just looking out for his constituents, then give Tim Fitch the same credit. That's all he's doing too. Looking out for his constituents.
He's just playing. He's just taking a cheap shot.
Oh no, wait, a politician.
This has got nothing to do with Kim Gardner.
I actually have no problem as being a county resident with the county putting 18 police officers on and paying for it. I think the county has more money than the city.
If there's a coordinated strategy that's consistent with, I know it's wonky, but their security strategy, which they have one of, then I'm fine with it. But not just, hey, please can you spare 18 officers. It's got to be more of a plan than that.
Going to go to Wendy on this next topic. Let's not talk about the guilt or innocence of the Roosevelt High School football coach, but let's talk about just this rule that he may have been suspended for, because the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reports that a football coach or a teacher cannot engage a student in social media. You can't make a contact through Twitter or Instagram with a student without the permission of the parents and the school district. All right. So some people are saying that that's why this gentleman is not a football coach for Roosevelt anymore, and students protested along with police officers on his behalf in a march on Monday. But overall, is there anything wrong if a football coach is contacting a student via Instagram? Is it any worse than calling him or her on the phone?
No, and I think that's why, and I'm a law and order girl, and I love to follow the rules, but I mean the outpouring of affection for this man, and I think he was he also did he wear two hats,
Yeah,
the athletic director and the football coach at Roosevelt. The fact that they would get up out, I mean, kids don't get excited about anything, and they walked to the the school board. And so I think, I mean, I certainly understand the policy in 2019, but I think it needs to, it needs a second look, because in 2019, kids live on social media. And when kids say that an adult is a bright light in their life, you just don't remove that person from their day to day. He was a mentor. He was, yes.
But without talking about him in particular, because we don't know all the facts in his case, but should a football coach be able to contact a
Yeah.
student?
If he was
yes.
talking
Okay.
about eligibility in football programs, and sometimes a social media account is the fastest way to reach them.
I will say yes, and I don't blame the school board, the school administration for enforcing this policy. And I do think it's about him. It's a feel-good story. I'm with Wendy that these kids are out there, and I sure hope he gets his job back. But having said that, yes, because I think that the policy should be that if there's a case where you misuse it or you abuse it, then you're subject to discipline or being fired. That's fine. But the idea in 2019 that you can't communicate via social media is ridiculous.
No, it's not. You got to have a policy that says, like, that's out. Nope. You're not doing it through social media and Instagram and whatever else it is. That's the policy, because all that is going to do, if you start ignoring that, is going to lead to trouble and lawsuits and everything else. Everybody, hey, you're going to teach here? You're going to be an administrator here? Don't do it. Okay?
Why?
And
But
that's
I think-
fine.
Why?
Here's the thing. Here's the other thing, and I agree with Alvin on this.
I don't.
Because, and I think if you talk about a specific case, but what I'm going to say is that I support the school board's policy. Because what we're going to do is look at this case here, and obviously these students care about him, and seems to be a caring teacher. But you're not going to you can't just allow the football coach. So you're going to allow every teacher to communicate with every student through the far more informal media of social media. And that's fine until something comes up where there's inappropriate contact started through
just said that.
social
Then
media.
you
right?
enforce it.
Well, but then you enforce it, so you let it
Well,
happen.
you've
But
got-
why not say you have
can
a
they call
phone, you have an email? If you have a phone,
Phone's
the
less
phone-
accountable. The phone,
where
you
do
don't
you
know what's
think they're
said.
getting to social media?
My point is this: if you want accountability,
Text them or
if
email
you,
them.
If you
Text
no,
them
no,
or email
the,
them.
the
I
point
think
is,
people would have problems with that too.
right, I think
Why
it's,
so?
it's the most transparent thing you can have. If you put something on social
Oh, no,
media,
this is it.
it lives
All right,
on,
yeah, case
and
in
you can,
point.
if you say
Let me-
something inappropriate,
Case
it's
in point.
right
would not,
there.
right.
Right, case in point.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, you can do it, all right? Let's say that.
Yeah.
All right, and I have social media contact with 80 students. All 80 of them are girls. Now, somebody would say, what's up with that, man?
Okay, well, then you I just said,
I haven't
then you act on
violated.
it.
I haven't violated any
said
policy.
you can have rules.
But
No.
yeah, what's going on with that?
The only
See,
person who's
what?
going to say that to you is Mrs. Reid.
No,
And
I'm
as long
I'm
as
being
you
very
have-
serious here. I'm being
I am
very serious
too.
because
I am
I'm
too.
just saying this is
As long
this-
as you walk the straight and narrow.
Let me just say something. If you read the Atlantic article on how you reduce violence, you got to find the shooters. How do you find the shooters? You go on social media and you find the kids who are brandishing firearms. And if a coach is doing that, going on Facebook or Instagram saying, okay, what kids are displaying bad behavior,
Well, then
that's how you
no,
find
then
them.
you go to the school board or whatever, but you don't have to contact them. There is nothing that says you can't.
Are you okay
if I
with
put it
it?
out on Facebook?
But you're okay with a phone,
Are you okay
just
with a
not
phone
an
call?
Instagram
No,
account.
what I'm
Because
saying-
that's less accountable.
No,
Kids
but-
don't use phones.
No, I'm saying it, but an administrator.
How do you think they
They're-
get
yeah.
the Facebook
They
and
don't
the
do this.
Instagram?
They don't do
that.
this.
Voice
They don't
call.
do that part.
This is
If you
guys
send
are
a
so
text to their
wrong.
number
No,
that
you're so
says
wrong.
practice
I think
has
you all-
been
I
canceled.
really-
You've got to have if somebody
Period.
misbehaves in contacting only girls, or they say something suggestive, or they do something wrong, they should be disciplined at that point. But it's the way we communicate now, and it's
All right.
perfectly acceptable.
Let's move on
for
to
them
our next and possibly last topic. Alvin Reid, you write that sports column for the St. Louis American. Have you written about the possibility of changing the name of the street Rams Way at Rams Park or wherever that is in Earth City to Athletic Way? Sam Page, the county executive, wants to change the name Rams Way to Athletic Way before the Battlehawks start practicing there soon.
Go Battlehawk. Okay, this is kind of a bizarro take on it. I think it should remain the same. We wanted the Rams. We got the Rams. We bent over backward to get them, and they were here for 20 whatever some odd years, and we lost the Rams. But the idea that we had that franchise just because we're mad at the owner and didn't turn out the way we wanted to, which in part was very much our fault, no, leave it Rams Way. It just should remain Rams Way. I mean, we're not changing names about Civil War people and all that.
Go ahead.
Well, we are changing a lot of the Civil War.
Well,
monuments.
there's a debate about it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Right.
I hate it when you take the high road. I mean, I really, really do, because you make it tough for the rest of us. I understand what you're saying. Leave it there. If we're talking about the Civil War and having plaques explaining the wrongheadedness of this or that, then maybe this should serve as a cautionary tale to future generations about stealing other people's.
I don't think this is a political correctness thing, and I'm with you on not renaming Columbus, and Lindbergh was anti-Semitic and yada 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 yada. But I think that because their history here was so, first of all, it's not something.
They won the Super Bowl.
On the list of important issues in St. Louis.
It's
kind of way
Right,
down.
I agree.
But I mean, I have no problem at all with them just saying we'd kind of like, particularly with this particular facility that we ended up kind of getting hosed on. I don't mind us wanting to forget that. I don't see a need to call it Rams Way, so I think it's fine.
I have the solution. Packers Way.
There you go.
Wow.
Cowboy Boulevard.
How about
Give us a
number
call.
15, Mahomie? That's what I like.
yeah, the new-
I
How
like to call it
no
that.
team here way or something.
No
I
team
know.
here.
I
How about
don't
Super
know.
Bowl Way?
Super
Really
Bowl way.
close Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I like that.
Super Bowl drive.
I like that, but you're right. We did have.
How about naming it after a distinguished, inspiring St. Louisan?
No.
Steve Elman.
Elman way.
How about
Hey, by the way, I like Steve Elman.
Kurt Warner
all the
pass?
time.
I like
Okay.
that.
Let's go to the mailbag and see what you had to say about last week's program. Starting with Larry Snowpeck, who wrote, "Ray's all for doing something to get the loop trolley right. Apparently spending only $51 million of government money for a couple of miles of line was doing nothing. Thank you, Larry, of Alton, Illinois." Diane Ortlip wrote, "Use the trolley for parties that want to serve alcohol. We went to a party bike in Nashville and had a fun time. No pedaling required on the loop trolley." Diane lives in St. Louis. "It's called your turn, not host's turn." That from Linda Wanling of St. Louis, Missouri. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, or those tweets. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. And you can listen to us on your favorite podcast channel. That would be Apple, Spotify, Google Play, or TuneIn. Thanks so much to Joe Holleman for sitting in for Bill McClellan, who returns next week. We sure appreciate you joining us, but don't go away, because in just a moment, Wendy and I will be reading your tweets and taking your phone calls on your turn. Thanks for joining us.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Welcome to Donnybrook, your turn. I am but a lowly underling sitting next to the boss tonight. We had a really lively show.
Yep.
We are aware of the fact that we are having some audio issues. We appreciate your patience in bearing with us, because the show must go on, as you know, Charlie. Where are we starting?
Well, let's remind everybody that they can go to 9net.org/Donnybrook-stream. So you got that. And also you can watch us on Facebook Live, and you can watch the program with better audio quality. And we assure you the top technicians at NASA are working to remedy the situation ASAP. Meanwhile, back to live action, Dave in Glendale. Thanks for joining us, Dave. Did Dave, oh, it's Jerry. Jerry, Jefferson County. Hi, Jerry. Jerry,
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
we're doing
We're
okay.
doing well.
Hey, I just got a little comment about the Rams way.
Yeah.
Now, if that were Kroenke way, I would say do away with it. But I got fond memories of the Rams. Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt. I say leave it Rams way, and that's just the way I feel about it. And real quickly, you guys, I tried to get in when you guys were talking about having St. Louis County and St. Louis City merge.
Right.
And only one person really talked kind of against it, and he's at Kirkwoodian, and I won't name him by name. But everybody else talked about how safe St. Louis is and that there's nothing wrong with it and everything. I would just like to know, is there anybody out of the 5 regulars that actually lives in that safe municipality?
Well, first of all, I don't recall the conversation where we
all said that
anything
St.
like
Louis
that.
is safe.
No, I don't recall that one. But I do work in downtown St. Louis, and I've been there every day, every weekday, or most recently 4 weekdays out of 7, for 32 years now. So I know a thing or two about St. Louis living.
And Ray lived in the city for a good long while, and Bill lives on the city line.
But overall, I don't believe it's true that 4 out of 5 were in favor of the Better Together and that everybody said that there's no crime in the city. But may have had audio difficulties on that broadcast.
That would explain it, Jerry. But we thank you for the really high road that you are taking when it comes to the Rams. We appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Thank you much.
All right. Don't be a stranger. Call again. Maybe tonight if we need you. Let's go to David in Glendale. Hi, David. How are you tonight?
Thank you. Great. I was calling about the audio issues, but I noticed that you know about them, which is good. It reminds me of sitting on the shortwave radio.
Yes.
Listen to the Kuala Lumpur or something.
Yeah.
And getting half of what they said. Anyway, I wanted to comment on the coach. You know, that's the new media, is the contacting through social networks.
Right.
That's right.
And a lot of the teachers that are doing this are there to help the kids out.
Right.
And keep them safe. And I am 100% behind what he did. And, you know, I think the school district needs to change their policies, because there are a lot of teachers that are totally into their kids and know what they want. As far as Rams way, ditch it. I think it needs to go away.
Hey, thanks for the call. I thought, we should name it after somebody who's been inspiring. And just off the top of my head today, I said, hey, what about Elston Howard, St. Louis guy, first black player on the New York Yankees, or somebody else who's inspiring? You know, Athletic Way seems a little bland and generic to me. Doesn't, athletic means nothing. But
I kind of I liked Alvin's idea about, maybe Super Bowl way as a way of honoring the glory days of the greatest show on turf. And I really like the fact that so many of you are choosing to remember all of the good times and not the Stan Kroenke inspired not so good times.
Right.
So that's really very nice. Let's go to Bill in Rock Hill. Speaking of positive people, hello, Bill.
Maybe they ought to change it to no way, but that's not why I called.
No way.
But at any rate, regarding security on Metrolink, first of all, Joe Holleman was incorrect where he said they are not enforcing the fares. When Wesley Bell took over as county prosecutor, one of the first things he said he was going to do is he was going to enforce the fares on Metrolink again, so they are being enforced.
But how about Kim Gardner, Bill?
Well, here's the thing. They keep talking about regionalism and that. I mean, they've got to work something out on this so that, as far as I'm concerned, Kim Gardner is irrelevant to the argument. The bottom line is you got to keep the thing secure, and whatever works best, that's how you do it. And, I mean, St. Louis County was the one that created the problem in the first place because it was their prosecuting attorney, Robert McCulloch, who decided he wasn't going to enforce the fares. Prior to that time, they were not having any problems on Metrolink. And then when St. Louis County said, we're not going to, or specifically McCulloch said, I'm not going to enforce the fares, that's when the trouble all started.
That's interesting.
It's certainly...
And it's mostly been in the county part of the line, too. They have not had near as much trouble in the city and in St. Clair County. St. Clair County has really stepped up and has said, we are not going to tolerate any problems on our portion of Metrolink.
That's interesting. And, of course, it was in St. Louis County where St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist Tony Messenger found that some of the patrolmen who were supposed to be on the platform or in the cars were instead just kind of hanging out in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks a lot for your call. As always, thanks, Bill. Bill and Rock Hill.
Weren't they napping? Didn't they have the...
They might have been.
The paper over the...
Yeah, they put the paper over the camera, right.
Right. So thanks, Bill. Let's go to Mary D. in Ballwin. Hi, Mary. Welcome to Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi. Thank you so much. Just a couple of comments about the teacher with Roosevelt School and then the social media. And a couple of things that struck me about it is that, well, first of all, the school district does have their policy about not using social media, okay? And, you know, so if you don't like a policy, then you got to work to change it. And the other thing about that, and it seems kind of harsh because apparently this teacher is well-liked and doing a great job in the relationships with the students. That being said, within different professions, whether it's, well, I know as a clinical social worker or nursing, other professions, you have codes of ethics, guidelines around professional behavior, things that you have to be aware of when you are a professional. And I think that one of the things that's really difficult with this, and I know things have changed in the use of social media, but it's important that as professionals have guidelines for if you're using social media. It's different when you're a professional as opposed to just a regular person off the street. And so I would just say that it's unfortunate what's happened with this. This teacher seems really a great person, but it's there's a lot of area where problems can happen because of unprofessional behavior. So everybody needs to have guidelines.
Yeah, thanks so much for the call, Mary. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know, I just feel, maybe like Ray did, that you can do inappropriate things over the telephone or on Instagram or on Facebook or even
or
in
by
person.
mail.
By mail.
By snail mail.
Many different ways. And so maybe the policy just hasn't really caught up with the way people communicate these days.
Well, and when you think of the needs of children, high school students, and if he was as active in, maybe Division II recruiting, he doesn't have time to do it any other way. He needs to take advantage of the immediacy of social media as a way of knowing where the kids are and the fastest way to get to them. And the needs of the kids, and Mary, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I say this with all due respect. I think the needs of the kids are more immediate. We know that governing bodies kind of move at a glacial pace, and the needs of the kids, if I'm Trey Porter, then I might maybe step outside of the line in order to serve the children that I feel so strongly about. But obviously there are going to be a lot more conversations about this, but we thank you for your phone call.
Hey, we have a couple of tweets. Let's see what the Twitterverse has to say. Craig Riggins, why does the idea of Metrolink having its own designated police department that would have arrest authority on the trains and within a certain perimeter of stations never given consideration?
At Holy Star 77, at least my Donnybrook got some mileage today.
All right.
Thank you for that.
For what? Let's hope, I'm not sure. Audio?
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe the two of us.
It was
Who
something
knows?
we said. Hey, back to the phones we go. Patrick and Festus. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, good evening. I love your show. I watch it every week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just think that there's an easy solution for the police department. You put a St. Louis County cop on at one end of the line. He rides to the city border. He calls in, lets the dispatcher know that he's there, does a couple wood shampoos, gets back on the train, drives back out to his police car out in St. Louis County, and then maybe the next shift they have another officer do it. Maybe he just goes once a week. The bad guys never know what train he's going to be on, and the people on the train are glad to see that brown shirt get on and off at the county line and again at the city line.
Well, I don't think it's complicated. It's not brain surgery, and other city rapid transits and trains and other subways are able to figure it out. So I think we should be able to do it. Thanks a lot for your call.
Thank you, Patrick. And I know I speak for Charlie when I say that we are really grateful for your participation tonight because you're being rather heroic. We know that when we have audio problems, that creates a non-optimal viewing experience, but they're hanging with us, aren't they, Charlie?
Absolutely.
Let's go to Debbie in St. Louis. Hi, Debbie. Welcome. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I'd like to make the point. Yeah, hello?
You're on.
Hello?
You're on.
Yeah. Okay, this is Debbie Kaiser from St. Louis, Dogtown area.
Okay.
67 years old, and I'd like to say rules are rules. That teacher knew the rules before he broke them. I'm all for that he gets along with the kids and everything, but my God, there was other ways to handle it. Meet with the kids after school, on school grounds. Why do you think you have a right to break a rule and go to social media and then expect to keep your job?
Well, because he was trying to figure out if the kids were into bad behavior by inspecting their images on social media.
The same way the police...
But that's the job of the parents. That's the job of the parents. That's the problem with kids today. Parents don't parent.
There might be some truth to that, but I think it also takes a village. It really does to raise the kids. It's not just your parents, but it's the coach, it's the neighbor, it's the priest,
Yes,
it's the
does.
rabbi.
So why didn't everybody get together, the rabbi, the priest, whoever, and change the rules first so that he could then contact them on social media?
Well, maybe the rules should be changed, and maybe this is how we're going to end up doing it, by a coach who, in a good faith effort, trying to find out what the kids are doing.
Debbie, if your child, if for whatever reason you are not the parent you need to be, and your child is in trouble, and a concerned adult, father figure, mentor, whatever, do you want them to follow the rules, or do you want them to do everything they can to see to it that your child is safe or has a better future?
Well, I'll tell you what. My child happens to be 48 years old with a 6-year-old grandson, okay? And everybody has to follow the rules first. That's what rules are for. And, yeah, I would think that he could contact the guidance counselor and say, hey, I'm really worried about this child. Then let the guidance counselor do their job and take care of looking into it.
Thanks a lot,
We thank you for the phone call, Debbie. We appreciate it.
Let's go to the next tweet. Mark in Zeroland. There should be no unmonitored one-on-one contact of any kind between teachers and students. There are modes of contact within social media services. Private one-on-one contact is how pedophiles groom their victims. Well, I think some do. I think there are many ways that pedophiles can reach victims, and there were pedophiles before there was social media.
Thank you very much, and your tweets are welcomed. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. Let's go to Dorothy in St. Louis County. Hi, Dorothy. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hello there, and I enjoy watching Donnybrook. I have for years.
Thanks.
I'm just curious what Jeff Hawley's job is supposed to be. What does he actually do? We know he coattails after Trump, So maybe in a roundabout way, some of his silly suggestions come from that area. I'd like your opinion on that. Thank you.
Well, he represents Missouri in the U.S. Senate, and his job is to improve the country, I guess. He's thinking that by bringing jobs from federal agencies into the heartland and elsewhere, it'll be good for some of our beleaguered communities, and it'll save the federal government some money.
He is like every politician before him and every politician that there ever will be. He is ambitious. And he is continuing to make a name for himself. He is unapologetically conservative. He is unabashedly Midwestern. And so, you know, he's playing to his base like everybody else, Dorothy. But we appreciate your phone call. And he doesn't, he's tempered his remarks, I think, about the president lately. Don't you think he has?
I haven't heard him say too much about him at all. Yeah,
no, not at all. So thank you, Dorothy.
Hey, it's Dan's turn. Dan, hello.
Hello. I enjoyed, I think it was Debbie's comment about her 48-year-old son, and I thought it was kind of cute that she was concerned about him on social media. I am uncomfortable with the social media situation. I probably just don't understand what's happening with it. What I do know is like I read or saw on TV articles about like these pro teams that are targeting high school kids using social media. And I have to begin to think about coaches and whatnot and how far they can go with it. And even who am I talking to on social media? Just because somebody says he's, a coach doesn't mean that that's who I'm talking to as a coach. It could be an assistant that he's hired or something like that. Trump uses social media, and I suspect that he probably does his own work. There's enough mistakes to indicate that I don't think any professional does it. But coming back down to social media with at the high school level, that's my concern. I mean, how far does this go? Do they start targeting kids for different things? Where do you want to begin and where do you want to end? And again, I may not fully understand the issue. I'm just very uncomfortable with it.
I think you raised some good points. Thanks.
Absolutely do. And I'm sure that all of this will be discussed thoroughly at the St. Louis School Board at their next meeting that involves Trey Porter and his future. Thank you, Dan, for making all of those points. Let's go to Manchester. Francie is on the line. Hi, Francie. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook, your turn. I hope it's Francie or not Francine.
Pardon me, I didn't hear the last word.
Is it Francie or Francine?
Francie.
Speak into your telephone, Francie. You're on the air.
Okay. I would like to say that I have been a clinical social worker in many school districts in 3 states.
But you got to turn your television down. You got to turn the volume of your television down, otherwise you'll get really confused. And that's really true for everybody. When you call in, turn the volume on your TV down.
Francie, speak into your telephone, please.
Okay, and I would not, under any circumstances, use social media for reaching a student. Our policy would be that we would talk with Yes, I am doing that.
Okay, why don't we put you on hold?
Yeah,
we'll tell you. We'll put you on hold, Francie. We'll get back to you, and we'll explain how this is going to work.
Can I continue? I'm okay. Can I continue?
Well, let's put you on hold. We'll be right back with you. First, we're going to go to Kelvin in St. Louis. Hi, Kelvin. What's going on, buddy?
Well, I'd like to know, we speak on the Cardinal Ritter issue tonight. I fell asleep. Did you guys talk about Cardinal Ritter?
We did not talk about Cardinal. No, not this
week. We talked about
week.
Roosevelt.
We talked about Cardinal Ritter last week.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to speak on Cardinal Ritter if I could. It's we get all of that about what happened, about the kid being playing ineligible and the wrong jersey and so forth. I thought that the diocese or Ritter, whoever, they came down with strict. They came down, hard and fast on their decision, which is understood. But I'm to understand that they're also now considering penalizing this kid next year for 8 games.
Wow.
Have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard that.
I have not either.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much. And with all the stuff that's went on in the within the church, I would think that they I mean, I get it, that was a very serious violation, and but I would think a whole season and losing the coaching staff and a AD and the whole staff would be sufficient, and to go into another 8 games next year for this kid, now it's getting vindictive. I would think it's getting beyond.
Yeah.
We're not we are over and above. That's my opinion.
Thanks for the call. Kelvin, thanks a lot. We'll see what happens. Yeah, the coaching staff has since been fired since our last broadcast, the broadcast we talked about this last week. Now I think we're back with Francie. Hopefully your television volume has been turned down. Francie, take it away.
Yes, yes it is, and I apologize.
That's okay.
I wanted to say that in my 30-year career, half of which was working in schools, I would never use social media to contact anyone under 18. And I would first call the parent. I do feel free to call a parent at any time, but if there's an emergency or something has to be done, it needs to go through the principal or assistant principal or somebody that has the ability to assess the situation and do what they need to do. I always told my principal when I was making a hotline call and let them know ahead of time before I made the call. And I do think there are professional standards that you need to have. And I understand this is a high school situation, so the coach might have been more free to feel that he could reach those students that way, but it's not appropriate.
Thank you so much.
That's my opinion.
Sure, appreciate it. 30 years of experience. Of course, for most of those 30 years, we didn't have social media.
That's right.
So it's kind of a new thing, and the kids aren't really communicating by email much or telephone at all, really.
Thank you for your patience, Francie. We really do appreciate it. Let's move now to South City. William is on the line. Hi, William. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Oh, thank you, folks. I just wanted to say a little bit on the changing of the Rams Way street assignation, and I was an okay Rams fan, actually more of a Bronco fan, but I think just looking over Wendy's left shoulder when she's in the isolated shot of the studio there, take a look and see maybe rename that street Lucky 13 High Road. Thank you. Have a good night.
Very nice. Lucky 13, Kurt Warner, High Road, like it. Thank you for that, William.
Charles and Webster. Hi, Charles.
Hi. The reason that I understand the Department of Agriculture was sending their people to Kansas City was that the scientists in the department had determined that there was climate change. And for punishment to them, they decided to send them to Kansas City. And that's my whole understanding of why that was done.
Some have alleged that.
And that was what Josh Hawley, that's what he found kind of offensive, that there is so much, that there is such an elitist attitude within the federal government that they would consider moving to Georgia or to Missouri, or I suppose especially Missouri, as punishment.
Yeah, I mean, it could be true that there was some sort of retribution against employees who are not on the same page in the Department of Agriculture. I don't know, but I think it's a pretty good idea to at least explore whether we could save some money by moving some of those jobs outside of the nation's capital to cities like Columbus or St. Louis or Louisville or wherever. You know, now that Amazon is going to be in Northern Virginia, it's going to be incredibly expensive to live there, and we might be doing a favor for some of the federal employees by bringing them into the heartland.
Well, and people have, poo-pooed Senator Hawley's agenda, but Congress saw fit to bring Mark Zuckerberg in this week and put him on the hot seat and demand that he answer some questions. And that is essentially what Josh Hawley was doing. The same thing as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So he can't be wrong on every conceivable issue. Do we have one more call, or we need to?
I think we're flat out of time, aren't we?
We are too. We're so sorry.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Thursday.